Hi, I'm Rebecca Ruth, and welcome to Designing with Intention.
Thank you for being here. Um, so I was going to kick off before we kind of jump into like the full interview with just some quick questions about like what are kind of your favorite things. So having studied illustration, um, do you have like a favorite media that you work with, or do you prefer like digital versus traditional media?
Well, if you had asked me 20 years ago when I was graduating from art school, I would have said anything that didn't have to do with the computer. But now that I'm pretty fluent on the computer, I've been working on it for 20 years. I would say that even when I start a project, I'll start it with ballpoint pen and paper, and at some point it ends up going digital, even if it's just at the very end to clean things up or adjust the color. So kind of a combination. Drawing is still, my favorite way to get an idea out there. But, I look at the computer not as cheating, but as just another tool to use.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a very handy tool now. And
Yeah.
as things have evolved since we were in school with the digital programs and options and stuff, it's definitely the quality to which you can kind of mimic some traditional things is pretty amazing. So,
Yeah. And now I find that when I'm working with, paint, for example, and I do something I don't like, I want to Command Z and undo it. And I get really frustrated when I can't go back
yes.
by every 10 steps. And
oh, that undo option is
yeah,
is like ingrained in your brain after a while.
exactly.
Oh, I love that. I think the same way a lot of the times too. So speaking of drawing, what are some of your favorite things that you like to draw?
It's always people. It's always been people. And now I love to sketch. I always have a sketchbook on me, but I don't always have the time to sketch. So my sketchbooks have ended up being mostly airport and beach scenes because vacation is when I can really, let go of everything I have to do and just do what I want to do. But whenever I'm, scanning an area for what do I want to sketch, it usually always has people in it. Ironically, I haven't drawn like any pictures of my own people in my family, but strangers at restaurants, people waiting to board a plane, like that's usually it.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely with drawing people, there's that, that doesn't look like me or whatever sometimes. So I think sometimes it's just safer to draw.
And my kids always want to like show the person I'm drawing the picture, and I'm like, no, I'm doing it for me. I'm not doing it for them, and it might not capture them the way they want to be captured. So
yeah. I always remember like from school, you doing like these amazing fashion illustrations that were always so fun, which totally makes sense to what some of the early projects you worked on in your career.
yeah.
So I'm excited to chat about that more too down the line here. So continuing on with like some of your favorites, like what about do you have particular art and design influences that were strong in whether in school or now, or who do you look up to or are inspired by?
That's such a good question. And as I've been thinking about that, I realized that has really evolved kind of at the same time that my career has evolved. Again, back in art school, I think John Singer Sargent was one of my favorites because his oil paintings were just like luscious, and he had such a great feel for costume and fashion, even just within his, portraits of society people. And I really just could spend hours looking at that. As I got into the textile world, I found William Morris was a great influence. Marimekko always, which is totally different from William Morris, always has a soft spot for me because my childhood bedroom was decorated with it. And then now kind of the culmination of all of that, well, and then before I get to that, I started getting involved in political work and advocacy and looking for art that has sort of more of a meaning behind it. You know, Shepard Fairey with his political posters, and Kara Walker. I love her storytelling, even though it can be very dark. So then to sort of combine all of that, you know, the figures, the fashion, the prints, and then the meaning. I just love Kahinda Wiley because he's just got, you know, amazing figures, but also really cool prints and patterns, and everything has a story behind it. So that sort of, you know, sums up all of my interests.
Yeah, yeah. Shepard does too a lot too with
Yeah.
the combination. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then now with like being more on the graphic design path, like what are some of your favorite fonts that you like to work with?
Right now I'm leaning towards like really crisp, clean fonts, mostly sans serif, Avenir, Geosans, the Whitney group of fonts. If it's a serif font, just the classic Georgia or Garamond. I mean, some of the projects I do, I use some more novelty things. If, you know, someone wants a retro look, or, you know, you're sort of mimicking a period of art or design. But I just try not to, you know, use anything that is like super popular right now that, you know, is going to look totally like you're going to see it everywhere. Like Lobster is the one that comes to mind that I think it's a cool font, but I will never use it because it's become like just so overused, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun to like try to stand out apart from like the crowd a little bit. And then when you were a kid, what did you think you wanted to do when you grew up?
I thought fashion designer for a while. I had a babysitter who would come over with her 17 magazines, and I would draw the prom dresses, and, you know, all the adults were like, oh, you're going to be a fashion designer. And then eventually I realized, like, I didn't want to create the clothes. I just wanted to draw them. And that's sort of where that fashion illustration thing came in. You know, I want someone else to design them, but I love drawing fashion. I love drawing clothes, drawing the prints and patterns. And so that sort of led me to look at illustration as a possible future.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was a good choice. And so in a line with like your childhood, do you have any vivid memories aside of like with your babysitter involving art from when you were younger, like that kind of helped you know that that was something that you wanted to pursue at some point?
Well, the origin story that my family likes to tell is, and I don't even really remember it, but was going to Disney World. Yeah, I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and afterwards just spending hours drawing the people from the It's a Small World ride, which I went back to Disney World a couple years ago with my kids, and that ride still like held that I mean, it's beautifully designed. It, you know, even now, just visually, I could have sat in there and drawn the little scenes. But that was, you know, that was when I think my parents were like, oh, we should probably, you know, look into some art classes. So yeah, and then from then on, it was just always having that sketchbook, and like I said, the 17 magazines or, you know, Vogue magazines or whatever, you know, was coming to my house, which was probably like Ladies' Home Journal. You know, I was always drawing the people in them.
Yeah, yeah. My daughter loves It's Small World. That's her favorite ride. We have like all sorts of It's Small World stuff. So I love Mary Blair, right? Like,
yeah.
So how do you think the private classes that like your parents signed you up for kind of differed from the art that you did in school?
I think from what I can remember, the school classes were were much more crafty. It was much more about like cutting and pasting. which I've never been that into. I just wanted to draw and paint. So the private classes, I was more leading, it was what I wanted to do. Also, I was a really shy kid, and for a while it was just me and the instructor, and then the instructor actually brought in another friend who was equally shy, and we're to this day still very close. But she kind of drew us out, and it almost became like a form of talk therapy, which I think also is why art still feels like kind of a safe place for me. So, both the working on the technical and the skill side, but also just, having art as a comfortable place was really important to me.
Yeah, I mean, art is like therapy. I feel like throughout my life, that's definitely been something that I can relate to. And then, so how do you think some of those experiences from childhood kind of influenced you on your creative journey? Like, how do you think your parents kind of played into you deciding to go to art school and everything?
Well, I mean, they were, like I said, from Disney World on, they were just really supportive of me pursuing art. They were always looking into the latest classes. They would drive me 30 minutes downtown to take classes at the Cleveland Institute of Art. And they were not art people, but they saw that it was something that, was important to me, and they wanted to do everything that they could to encourage that. So, they just sort of made it their mission to find out about, what classes were being offered. They sent me to Interlochen Arts Camp up in Michigan when I was 12 for overnight camp because, they heard that was a good program. That's sort of how we landed on RISD. Was my mom kept reading. She was a elementary school teacher, and in the back of illustrated books, she would always look at where the illustrator went to college, and just in Rhode Island keeps coming up, so we should probably go take a look at it. So, they just always.
I lost your sound there for a second.
Yeah, sorry. Someone was trying to FaceTime me.
Oh. Now is not the right time.
Yeah.
So you decided to go to RISD, and you decided on the illustration department. So basically, like, a lot of this kind of investigation from your parents helped you kind of propel you on that path. So right. What were some of the things that you, I guess, really what were some of your favorite classes from RISD and memorable kind of experiences?
Well, it's funny because recently my kids started asking me more questions about art school. I think it was because we were on a vacation where no one had their tablets at dinner, and we were forced to talk to each other. And the stories that they loved, and the stories that are probably the most memorable in my mind, were all the times I failed. Just the projects that were a disaster, like all of my three-dimensional design classes foundation year. I made a cardboard boat that sank as soon as it hit the water, and I remember a teacher just yelling at me about this clay acorn I had sculpted, that it was just wrong, and the center of balance, and she was hitting it with a stick, and they love those stories. But and I remember the critiques that I just walked away from feeling so hopeless. So I had to dig a little bit to think of the positive or the ones that I really loved. And you actually reminded me of that fashion illustration class that I think I took that winter session my freshman year, and I did really love that I probably would have taken that every year if I could have. I loved oil painting. I, still have a lot of my oil paintings from college, or my parents have them hanging in their house. I did like one great class, I think senior year winter session in the illustration department, that was really just a sketchbook class, and like kind of storytelling through sketchbook. I don't even remember the name of the class, but that was a really fun one too.
So do you have any like particular things that stick in mind of like advice that teachers or other students that they gave to you that has just kind of stuck with you over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I find that when I'm working, I always have some teacher's voice in my head, reminding me of things. I remember Mary Jane Began stressing something with like tangents, with, making things interesting, not having things sort of neat in a straight line. Oren Sherman did a whole lecture on patterns and I remember him showing slides of artists who use patterns in their work to add interest. And that is something that has always stayed with me. And maybe it was like a bit of foreshadowing, because I ended up working with prints and patterns, doing textile work. But, so I think about that class a lot, and even just, little things with color theory, or even just standing back and looking at things critically and sort of, saying if this was up on the wall in front of, 15 people, what would they say about it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think being able to be like self-critical, in addition to like, critiquing other people's work is like definitely something that's a strong skill that imparted on us.
Well, I have a lot of clients who will be, they'll ask for a change, or they'll be like, oh my God, like, am I hurting your feelings? I'm really sorry. And I'm like, listen, like, I can take it. I really learned to sort of disassociate or separate myself from the work. And, especially if it's something that's going to make it better, sometimes I don't agree with the client's changes, but I also learned to just swallow that.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard, when you really feel like strongly about something and somebody else just is not on board.
Yeah.
So, but you talked about a little bit about like kind of having like that thick skin with the clients. Were there other kind of soft skills that you feel like you developed at RISD, or things that you learned, like on the business side of things, or other, kind of important practices, I guess?
I wish I had learned more about the business side of things. I think probably just as a, 18 to 22-year-old, that was not where my head was at. I think there probably were chances, to learn more. But, some stuff about, protecting my work as far as copyrights. I think I'll never forget the illustrator who did the original Harry Potter covers came in and spoke with us and talked about how she had basically signed her rights away to Scholastic, and now like it was a huge hit and she wasn't seeing anything from that.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me. I won't say that I've always been like the best business person, but I definitely learned that.
Yeah, I remember that class too. And then, so after you graduated, what was your early career like?
Well, I graduated right before September 11th, 2001. I can't believe it's going to be 20 years, or it has been 20 years now since we graduated. But I, had this illustration degree and didn't really know what to do with it. Thought maybe I'd go to Boston and look around for work with a publishing house, and ended up getting hired in Cleveland, where I am from and where I had moved back to work at a company that uh, they started out by designing party favors, and then they were bought out by Hallmark. So it was a subsidiary of Hallmark here in Cleveland. And honestly, I think they hired me because they saw I'd gone to RISD and they needed another female in the art department because it was a very male dominated art department. And the art director, who was a female, was like, I need another woman in here with me. Because literally I walked into my cubicle and didn't know how to turn on my computer. Like I totally faked my way into that job and just said, okay, to everything. And luckily, I think the computer stuff, that's, like I said, it's just a tool. If you have the design sense or the design training, it's just, you learn how to navigate the tool. And that's what I did. So it wasn't the most creative work. It was a lot of applying Disney and Warner Brothers style guides to kids' party favors, Scooby-Doo and Batman and whatever the popular stuff was. But it was a great learning experience because I had never worked with style guides, setting things up for printers. Everything was being sold at Walmart and Target. So also learning how, to fit within the parameters of the retailers. So it was like graduate work to me because it really prepared me for my next couple of jobs.
Yeah, I feel like that's, some of the really important thing about those first jobs is having someone that kind of helps mentor you and really being able to learn a lot on the job from like other people that you're working with. So after that experience of working with that company, like then where did you kind of head next to on your career path?
So that company, after I was there about a year and a half, Hallmark decided, we don't really need this little satellite company in, a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. We're going to bring everything that they're doing to our headquarters in Kansas City. I had just moved back to Cleveland. I didn't know anyone in Kansas City. So I, did not move with the company. I opted to stay here and got a job at Bonnie Bell Cosmetics, which I hadn't known until about that moment, existed on the west side of Cleveland, so about a half hour from where I was living. And even though it's a huge company, and I think almost everyone remembers like Lip Smacker, and someone just recently was like, oh, did they do those kissing sticks? And I think they did. They weren't selling them when I worked there, but it was a family owned company that had originated in Lakewood, Ohio. And so I got a job with them, and it was great because even, like I said, even though it was a big company, it still had a small family feel. It was a small art department. We were really allowed to be creative and pitch our own ideas and have a real say in what everything from the print advertisements to the packaging to the corporate branding was going to look like.
Wow, that's amazing to be able to like kind of as your second job.
Yeah.
Be able to have that much input.
Yeah, it was I really did. I loved it, and I made some really good friends there, and probably would have stayed there longer, but I was there 3 or 4 years. And then I got engaged, and my husband was my fiance at the time was living in Columbus, Ohio. And I knew I had to move down there. So I started looking for jobs down there. And that was crazy because Columbus actually has a ton of companies that are based there, most notably the Wexner brands, which are limited brands. So at the time it was Limited, Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, Limited 2, Justice, Yankee Candle, like everything. And all those places had their art departments in Columbus. So I ended up getting a job with Justice clothing. At the time, I think it was Justice and Limited 2. Now it's all just Justice. which with my interest in fashion, like kind of felt like a dream come true. I mean, I remember walking through the building and just racks of clothes everywhere and the sketches on the wall. And yeah, I was like, this is so cool. Like, pinch me.
It's funny with like those kind of dreams that you had as like a kid kind of start to become reality, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, what did you do for Justice Unlimited?
So I was actually hired as an accessories designer, which was sort of just like applying Justice branded artwork to the accessories that would be sold in the stores: socks, jewelry boxes, tchotchkes, stuff like that. And within a couple months, I think the people I was working with realized I was more suited to the CAD department, was what they called it, but it was really textile design, print design, doing just all the prints and patterns that went on their clothes. And I was assigned to denim, which was kind of doing the artwork that would become all of the embellished, like rhinestone encrusted jeans or embroidered flowers on the back pockets. And then intimates or underwear and pajamas. And I think I did swim also. Mm-hmm. So, which are all very pattern heavy areas. Lots of cupcakes and hearts and cherries and flowers and monkeys like their icon, so monkeys went on everything.
Yeah,
you know, it really taught me again another skill set. You know, doing repeats. I learned we used a program called Euphoria to do all of the repeats in, and you know, again, learned on the job stuff about textile, the weft and the weave and everything that you know, I hadn't learned in college, that then I was like, oh, I wish I had taken some surface design in college. I probably would have really enjoyed it, and it would have applied here.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous. I wish I would have known about the Orange Sherman class.
Yeah.
And so then after, like, so how long were you with Justice, and then where did you go?
I was there 2 years, and then I got pregnant, and we wanted to move back to Cleveland. Both my family and my husband's family were up here. My husband traveled a lot for work in those days, and we just knew we needed a little bit more support. And also, you know, unfortunately, what this design work pays, if I had had a child in full-time childcare, that is pretty much where my salary would have been going. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we felt it made sense to move, and I would be at home and start a freelance career. And, you know, I didn't know how that was going to go. And now 13 years later, I'm still doing it. So.
Yeah. How was it starting a freelance career and being a new mom at the same time?
A lot harder than I thought. You know, I think I had these visions of like, I would just be on my computer and the baby would be in its bouncy seat and swing, and it would just be so easy. And, you know, obviously anyone who's had a kid knows that's not the case. And I found myself, you know, working during nap times or after the baby went to bed. And it was doable, but, you know, then there's the times where the baby doesn't nap and you still have a client that wants something. So it was definitely tricky. The nice thing about freelance is that I, you know, could say yes or no to projects. And even though I hate saying no, there were times that, you know, I just knew for my mental health, it was necessary. And, you know, I had to be patient. Now I'm in a place where my kids are either at school or right now they're at camp all day, every day. And more or less, you know, I know what my time looks like, and
Mm.
I can plan it. And even if they do get sick, there's, you know, able to be on the couch and I can still do my work. But,
Yeah.
you know, I definitely had to be patient for the first couple. I have 3 kids now, and, you know, so probably for 5 or 6 years, and know that, you know, as long as I kept my hands in it, there would be a time when I could do more than I was doing.
Mhm. Mhm. So being by family, was that helpful with then?
I mean, there have been a lot of times that I've reached out to my mom or my mother-in-law and said, you know, I've got this deadline, I've got this project that I've got to get done, and, you know, I need help with the kids. And they've been very understanding. You know, my parents, well, I mean, it was, you know, I think they look at it as their investment in me. They want to see me, and they know that again, even when I'm doing work uh, it's a paying job, it's career, it's also still therapy for me. It's also something that, you know, really kind of completes uh, how I feel. And so yeah, everyone has been really helpful uh, at letting me do this.
Mhm. Yeah, there's something to like sometimes, you know, other things in life cannot be going exactly the way you want them to be going, but to have some other thing that you're like have like you feel like you have more control over, to have that, to put some of yourself into it and like feel like something is going right. It's like I can completely relate to that experience. So then now, like that you've been doing, you know, freelance for 13 years, what have you been doing? Like, what's that been like? Like, what kind of projects do you like to work on now? Especially because I know you have 3 boys now. So having gone from these very girly like Bonnie Bell and Justice to now what you're doing, you know, what has that transition been like too?
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge change. And yeah, having boy after boy, I slowly just started giving away all of the lip smackers and Justice clothes that I had saved, thinking, you know, maybe I'd give it to a child one day. And I have to laugh. I used to know like every Pantone color for, you know, pink and purple. And um, now when I started freelancing, I was still sort of in that frame of mind. I did some greeting card work for some online companies. I did some invitation work for people, and then a couple of people who I had worked with at some of those early jobs, the Hallmark job, Bonnie Bell, who had then moved on to other things, hired me to freelance. I did some freelance work actually for Lancino, the breastfeeding supply company, which, you know, kind of still fit in with the arts and flowers and very feminine packaging. I did some work for Burt's Bees Cosmetics, which, you know, related back to the Bonnie Bell stuff. And then around 2016, I think things started to take a bit of a turn, which it started with someone asking for a favor. My brother-in-law was running for city council, and he said, hey, can you do these graphics for my campaign? I need a sign, I need walk cards, logo. And I said, sure. I had never really done anything like that. And I worked on his campaign, and he won, and I was kind of hooked. I was like, this is awesome. I may have had a part in helping this candidate, you know, win his election. And so from there, you know, and luckily he passed my name on to other people. So since then I've worked for another city council candidate, and then 2 candidates running for, one for the state House of Representatives and one for state Senate. And my state house client, Phil Robinson, I worked on his first campaign where he flipped his district from red to blue. It was the first time that district had ever gone blue. So that was huge. And then I helped him with his reelection campaign. And it was just such a thrill because not only did we win, but he is a candidate, a representative that I really respect and believe in. And so it was really important to me, not just to work on a winning campaign, but to help put someone in office that I felt was going to do good things for my community. I feel that same way about the city council people I helped. They're all people who I really like and admire. So, and not everyone has been a win, but the majority. So I'm happy about that.
I still love the from girls fashion justice to political justice.
I know, I'm still trying to figure out how to work that on my website.
Like you need that's like your brand
yeah.
Tagline.
To justice for women or something. Because I've done a lot of work for National Council of Jewish Women here in Ohio, and they do a lot of advocacy for reproductive justice and gun violence legislation and different social and political issues that are very important to me. And that was also something that started out, I kind of volunteered my services for something, and someone saw it and said, oh, well, why don't we pay you to do more of this? So a lot of that work has fallen into my lap that way. And, now as much as I loved the Bonnie Bell and the clothes stuff, and that was kind of like a dream then, I'm equally, if not more, passionate about the work I'm doing now because, I think it has more lasting consequences.
Yes, definitely like an impact into the world in general. What kind of tips do you have for other artists or creatives that might be thinking about, deciding to go freelance with their career?
Well, like I said, one of my biggest pieces of advice is just say yes to everything, because you never know what it will lead to and what kind of connections you will make from it. Obviously, if it's something you really don't believe in, and I'm sure there's been things that I just was like, this is not anything close to what I want to be doing. And, so within reason, but, I think Oren Sherman, again, in one of his classes told us, if someone offers you $100 to do a job, do $1,000 worth of work, and eventually you will get that $1,000 paying job. The amounts might have been different, but that was kind of the gist of it, that, do your best work no matter what you're working on, because you never know who's going to see it and where it's going to land you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a big one. Otherwise, I'm a horrible business person. I will admit that. And, I've just started, making people sign project agreements or contracts beforehand using a kill clause. And I don't think I've ever actually had to use that where, someone cancels a project and I've had to charge them anyway. But I think being upfront with people and letting them know what your expectations are, then they realize you're a professional and they're going to treat you professional and, maybe be a little bit more conscious of your time when you're working with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when you say the say yes to everything within reason, it's kind of also don't necessarily hold yourself back because you don't think have a skill or something too, right?
Yes.
not necessarily say yes to every miserable client that's going to abuse you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Or, you know, I definitely, you know, if I can tell the client's going to be, you know, a lot of work, not just a lot of design work, but like they're going to be a lot of work to work with. I adjust my prices accordingly, so that it's worth my time, or so that they say, you know, no. And, you know, I've learned to sort of identify that as well. But yeah, as far as, you know, I've definitely, people have asked me to do a website before I really knew much about web design. I was like, sure, you know, I can do that. There's been a lot of things that I've just, you know, luckily now there's a YouTube video for everything. So if there's something that I'm not totally sure about, I can usually, you know, find a tutorial and figure it out. So
yeah, I think being resourceful is definitely a skill from RISD too, is like being able to like sit down and figure things out when maybe you didn't know exactly what to do to start out with. There were definitely a lot of those kind of projects where it's like, like build a cardboard boat, or you know, build a chair that you could sit on out of cardboard. I did love those cardboard projects for freshman year.
Cardboard in a dumpster. I like remember like dumpster diving for cardboard to make
Oh, you had to get it like from the dumpster too? Oh.
Yeah, or like I don't know. I just remember like going to some restaurants after they closed and like grabbing their cardboard, where I think we probably could have just gone to the Met and bought it at store, but yeah.
Oh, so such fun memories. So for like you personally, how do you keep yourself inspired, and like how do you try to incorporate like, do you have like a personal creative routine that's, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, like how do you kind of keep yourself feeling fulfilled, you know, because I know like not all client projects are as exciting as other client projects, you know, like they're not all created equal. So
I wish I had a routine for it. That would be awesome. During COVID, when we were quarantined and there wasn't as much to do as far as, you know, driving my kids around and being busy with activities, I did log into some virtual life drawing classes, which again, like talk about therapy. It was, I would just like, and it was so funny having the nude model on my computer instead of in front of me. I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, but I was able to sort of tune out everything around me and sit, and they did, you know, the quick poses and then longer poses. And, you know, I had a lot of explaining to do when my kids or my husband walked by. Naked woman on my screen, but it was also a good learning experience for them to know that, like, you know, this is
part of art.
And it brought me back to, you know, those college days, and I just I feel like sketching, it's like a muscle, and there's muscle memory. I mean, some of it did, you know, come back, but it's also like, oh God, I haven't used this muscle in a while. I really need to exercise it. So I did that a couple times, and I wish I had more time to do it. And I think you can just like look up, like Google life drawing, and you can go to sites where you can click on things. But there's just something about like doing it in real time and knowing that model's going to move, and you can't pause it and you can't go back, and you just have to, the immediacy of it is, I think, what I really liked about it. So, you know, it would be great now that quarantine's over if, you know, I could actually seek out. I'm sure there are places around here where I could go do it in person. You know, we have the Cleveland Institute of Art in town, but, you know, for so many years I was busy with kids, so I wasn't able to do that. But like I said, I take a sketchbook everywhere, and you know, even when I'm out to dinner with my family, I'm sketching. This year I was on a lot of Zoom meetings, and that actually, usually when I'm in in-person meetings, I'm always like sketching on a piece of paper. And so instead on the Zoom meetings, I would have my sketchbook, and it was actually really fun to do like the little boxes where, you know, if I was sketching you right now, you'd have the whole bookshelf behind you, and, you know, everybody's environment totally different and unique, even like the angles that their camera is at. So I did a lot of fun, quick sketching that way. So it's, for me, it's just sort of getting it in when I can in between everything else. But I also, I save every piece of like mail or magazine clipping or anything that I look at that I think the design is really good. And especially when I'm doing the political work, because when you're designing for a campaign and you're like doing these mailers that, you know, people are going to look at for a second and throw in the trash. You know, anytime I see something that catches my eye and makes me want to read more, I'm like, that's good design. So I save a lot, you know, any catalog that comes in the mail, if there's cute prints or patterns, I'm cutting them out and either put them on my bulletin board behind me or in a notebook so that I can refer to them later. So that's the other thing I do to sort of feed my creative side.
Yeah. Do you, like, I know you were saying, you know, with the pandemic, you were able to do like the new drawing classes. Are taking classes like something that you try to do regularly, or is it just like because there was downtime?
Unfortunately, it was because there was downtime. Again, right now, my oldest is 13 and my youngest is 8. And so my time is starting to, if not open up, change a bit, where maybe I could look into doing classes again. And I've always wanted to, you know, play around more with printmaking, get back into oil painting, which I loved in college, but like since then, there's never really been, you know, much space for that mess. And so I hope to do more, even, you know, even if a class is just to give me that scheduled block of time. But yeah, right now it has been tough. I have a niece who likes to watercolor, so sometimes she comes over with her watercolors and like I'll sit with her, and that's a nice excuse. So far, my kids have very little interest in hearing about my stories of when I, you know, did bad work. So.
That's funny. Yeah, it's nice when my daughter wants to like sit and draw or paint with us. Although sometimes she wants to like do the thing that we're doing and not like necessarily her little drawing. It's like, well, this is mommy's work or this is daddy's work, so we can't let you draw on this, but here next to us. You know? So with your career now, like where do you kind of see yourself going for the future?
Well, I'd love to take on more candidates. I mean, now we're kind of in a slow time, you know, in between big elections. And so, you know, I'm just sort of talking to people and feeling out what's out there. I did some work this year for a client who he just sort of capitalizes on whatever the need is in the market, whether it's a cosmetic product or we got into these COVID status pins where he was like, you know, people are going to want to let other people know that they're vaccinated or that their quarantine has ended or what have you. And so we designed pins, magnetic pins that people can buy and wear. And apparently they were a big seller on Amazon. I did not follow my own rules and ask for a kickback, but I think they're selling well. I haven't seen people wearing them yet, although I have some samples. It hasn't really, you know, caught on, but it's interesting to look at, you know, I mean, obviously COVID's horrible and I don't want to say that like I'm capitalizing off of it, but to also see as the world changes, you know, what needs are there going to be for good design and, you know, what are we going to want to, this again comes down to communication. Like how can I quickly communicate to someone that I have been vaccinated and I'm safe to be around. So those kind of projects are interesting to me as well. And some of the other just nonprofit advocacy work that I do, I think I've definitely made a shift into doing projects that I feel are, have some meaning behind them. And I hope to continue.
Yeah. And then, speaking of like kind of having that connection, like with finding clients and networking and stuff like that, like, how do you think like you've come about like connecting with a lot of the clients that you've connected with?
Well, I've had to do very little marketing and networking. Every time things start to slow down for me, I think, okay, this is the time that I'm really going to work on that. And then like something will fall in my lap. And I'll just be off and running again. And like I did update my website this week in preparation for this talk, but I'm really bad about remembering, I should just be in the habit of every time I finish a project, like immediately uploading it, and I don't. So it's really been a lot of word of mouth, and again, doing doing a project for someone on more of a volunteer or pro bono basis, but having someone else be like, oh, you do design, I need this designed, or my company is looking for freelancers. So I haven't had to do a lot of seeking. So I wish I could give more advice about that.
I think though that is advice in a way. It's just like talking to and connecting with people that you may not even think are like the people that may need your work or whatever, but also having happy customers that refer you to other people. I think that's all part of staying busy, and it doesn't necessarily have like you don't have to invest in a big marketing plan because of those things. So I think I think that is a strategy in itself. So.
I did have for a while, and again, because of the pandemic, we've lost touch a bit, but there was a network of about like maybe 5 or 6 of us, all women freelancing, because we had kids at home. And in my area, we would meet for dinner every so often and talk about what we were working on, what struggles we were having. We could email each other and say, have you ever worked with this program? Or sometimes it was, I have a client, but I don't have time for them, or I don't think what they want is really in my wheelhouse. Does someone else want it? And that was also a way that I've gotten some work and was really helpful for networking and for meeting clients.
And then, so what are like in closing, like what are some, like a few pieces of advice that you'd have for other designers or creative people that are interested, like that are just starting in their careers?
I think, and this is maybe more for even people who are considering majoring in art or pursuing art as a career, there's so much out there for designers. I think when I was in art school, like my grandparents looked at me like, what are you going to do with this degree? And a lot of people were like, what do you do with an art degree? But I've told people recently, everything you look at, has been touched by a designer, whether it's a product designer, an industrial designer, a graphic designer. So don't underestimate the amount of work that's out there for a designer. And there's so much bad design out there. So I think just go into it, wanting to do good design. And I think if you do good work, it will find you, I hope. So yeah, I think just maybe don't be discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
There is a market out there for
yeah. I mean, that's the reason why I started this series is to help showcase like all the opportunities that are out there. And, you know, like even with it, like I think the past few interviews unintentionally have been like graphic design related, but each person has had a completely different way of, you know, and a completely different style and different projects that they've worked on. And I feel like that just, even within graphic design, there's such a wide gamut of projects and jobs and, you know, opportunities out there. And yeah, it's I think I totally agree that people have a very limited view of like what a career in the arts is. And it's like, if you really look around you, there isn't much that has been, it's like commercially produced or whatever, that hasn't had an artist involved in the process somewhere, you know. So yeah. So thank you so much for doing the interview today with us, Brooke. And we are going to jump over to Clubhouse for a bit for some discussion and Q&A. And if you have questions more about Brooke's like windy road there, as I feel like most of the artists that I've been talking to, you know, necessarily what they started out thinking they wanted to do and where you end up is. So thank you so much. And we will see you in Clubhouse. The
over
link
there
is in my bio, so please join us there. And thank you again.
Thank you.